Throughout history, some of the darkest crimes have been committed by those society least expects. Welcome to Haunt, Fear, Horror. Stories we dare not tell, your gateway to the macabre, the mysterious, and the chilling truths that lurk in the shadows. Before we embark on tonight's harrowing journey, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notifications, because what you're about to hear will keep you on the edge of your seat. Tonight, we uncover the chilling stories of three women whose actions redefine the meaning of evil. They weren't strangers in the shadows, or faces you'd fear on a dark street. These women were grandmothers, neighbors, even caregivers. But behind their smiles lay unimaginable cruelty. From a landlady burying secrets in her backyard, to a highway drifter leaving a trail of bodies, and an Italian soap maker with a horrifying recipe, these are the stories of Dorothea Puente, Aileen Wuornos, and Leonarda Cianciulli. If tales like these captivate you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. Share your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what you think about these chilling cases. Now let's begin. Sacramento, California, a city known for its historic charm and vibrant neighborhoods. But in the late 1980s, one address in the heart of the city became synonymous with horror: 1426 F Street. This unassuming Victorian boarding house was owned by Dorothea Puente, a woman whose calm demeanor and grandmotherly appearance masked unspeakable crimes. Dorothea was born Dorothea Helen Gray on January 9, 1929 in Redlands, California. Her early life was marked by tragedy and instability. Her father died of tuberculosis when she was just 8, and her mother, an alcoholic, died in a car accident a year later. Orphaned at 9, Dorothea was sent to an orphanage where she reportedly endured abuse. These early years shaped the woman she would become, a master manipulator who hid her darkness behind a facade of charm and kindness. As an adult, Dorothea reinvented herself repeatedly. She married multiple times, each relationship ending in divorce or abandonment. Her first marriage at 16 produced 2 daughters, both of whom she gave away, one for adoption and the other to relatives. In the 1960s, she began forging checks and was arrested for fraud. After serving time in jail, she continued her life of deception, often portraying herself as a nurse, teacher, or social worker to gain trust. In the late 1970s, Dorothea found her niche in Sacramento, opening a boarding house for the elderly, mentally ill, and disabled. She cultivated a reputation as a generous caregiver, often visiting charity organizations to find new tenants. But beneath the surface, her motives were far from altruistic. By the early 1980s, Dorothea's boarding house was thriving. She catered to the most vulnerable members of society, earning their trust with warm meals and comforting words. Once tenants moved in, she encouraged them to sign over their Social Security checks, promising to manage their finances. What they didn't know was that this seemingly kind woman saw them as expendable. Reports of missing tenants began to surface, but Dorothea was adept at deflecting suspicion. When questioned about the whereabouts of her tenants, she offered plausible explanations. They had moved away, found other housing, or simply left without notice. Her calm demeanor and unassuming appearance made it difficult for anyone to suspect her of foul play. The facade began to crack in 1988 when social worker Judy Moyes reported her client, Alvaro Bert Montoya, missing. Bert, a 51-year-old man with developmental disabilities, had been staying at Dorothea's boarding house. Judy became alarmed when Bert, who relied on her support, suddenly stopped contacting her. When Judy confronted Dorothea, she received evasive answers that only deepened her concerns. Police visited the boarding house to investigate Bert's disappearance. Dorothea welcomed them inside, her grandmotherly demeanor firmly in place. The house was tidy, the residents seemed content, and nothing appeared amiss. But as officers prepared to leave, they noticed something unusual in the backyard: freshly disturbed soil. Dorothea explained that she had recently had plumbing work done, but investigators weren't convinced. They returned with a warrant and began digging. What they uncovered left detectives and investigators in shock. Beneath the carefully maintained garden lay the decomposed remains of Dorothea's tenants. Over the course of several days, 7 bodies were unearthed from the yard. The victims, ranging in age from 52 to 78, had been poisoned with drugs like Dalmane, a powerful sedative. Autopsies revealed that they had likely been incapacitated before being suffocated or smothered. Once dead, their bodies were wrapped in cloth and buried in shallow graves. The discovery made national headlines, and Dorothea quickly became the prime suspect. But as police worked to uncover more evidence, she slipped away, fleeing Sacramento. Her run from the law didn't last long. She was arrested days later in Los Angeles after befriending an elderly man in a bar. The man recognized her from news reports and alerted the authorities. Dorothea's trial began in 1992, lasting nearly 6 months. Prosecutors argued that she had systematically preyed on society's most vulnerable, killing them for financial gain. They detailed how she had cashed her victims' Social Security checks even after their deaths, amassing tens of thousands of dollars. The defense painted a different picture, portraying Dorothea as a frail, kind-hearted woman who couldn't possibly have committed such heinous acts. The jury didn't buy it. Dorothea was convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder, though investigators believe she was responsible for at least 9 deaths. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Dorothea spent the rest of her life behind bars, maintaining her innocence until her death in 2011 at the age of 82. Even in prison, she continued to manipulate those around her, charming fellow inmates and staff with her grandmotherly persona. Today, the house at 1426 F Street still stands. It has been restored and is now a private residence, but its dark history lingers. Visitors to the area often stop to snap photos, drawn by the morbid curiosity of what lies beneath the surface. Dorothea Puente's story is a chilling reminder of how easily evil can hide in plain sight. She wasn't a shadowy figure lurking in the dark. She was someone's landlord, someone's neighbor, someone's friend. And yet, behind her kind smile, she was capable of the unthinkable. While Dorothea Puente's crimes were hidden in plain sight, our next story takes us to the open roads of Florida, where a woman named Aileen Wuornos unleashed a killing spree that would cement her place in the annals of true crime history. The year was 1989. Along Florida's highways, a disturbing pattern emerged. Bodies of men began turning up in deserted locations, each one killed in cold blood. The perpetrator? Aileen Wuornos, a name that would soon become infamous as one of America's most chilling female serial killers. But to understand the crimes, we must first unravel the story of the woman behind them. Born in 1956 in Rochester, Michigan, Aileen's life was marked by unimaginable hardship from the very beginning. Her father was a convicted child molester who hanged himself in prison before she ever met him. Her mother abandoned her and her brother Keith when Aileen was just 4 years old. The children were left in the care of their grandparents, but instead of a safe haven, Aileen endured years of physical and sexual abuse at the hands of her grandfather. By the age of 11, Aileen had begun engaging in sexual acts in exchange for cigarettes, alcohol, and food. By 14, she was pregnant after being raped by one of her grandfather's friends. She was sent to a home for unwed mothers, where she gave birth to a son who was immediately put up for adoption. Shortly after, she dropped out of school and was forced to leave her grandparents' home, becoming homeless and surviving through petty crime and prostitution. Aileen's early years laid the groundwork for the violence that would later define her life. By the late 1980s, she had drifted to Florida, where she continued working as a prostitute. It was a dangerous life, filled with violent encounters and constant threats. But something inside Aileen had changed. She would no longer see herself as a victim. Her killing spree began on November 30th, 1989, when she met Richard Mallory, a 51-year-old electronics store owner, while hitchhiking. The two reportedly spent time together drinking and talking, but the night ended in bloodshed. Mallory's body was discovered days later in a wooded area, shot multiple times. Wuornos claimed that Mallory had brutally assaulted her and that she killed him in self-defense. However, as more bodies began to appear, it became clear that this was no isolated incident. Between 1989 and 1990, Wuornos killed 6 more men. Her victims were all middle-aged or older, and like Mallory, they were found in remote locations, their bodies riddled with bullets. Wuornos used a .22 caliber revolver, a small weapon, but one that delivered deadly results at close range. After killing them, she would rob her victims, often taking their vehicles and personal belongings. But Aileen wasn't acting alone during this time. She had formed a turbulent, romantic relationship with Dorothea Moore, a hotel maid she had met at a bar. The two lived together, moving from motel to motel, funded by Aileen's prostitution and the proceeds from her murders. Moore later claimed she had no knowledge of the killings, though she benefited from the stolen goods and money. The evidence against Wuornos began to mount as police linked her to stolen items pawned under fake names and witness accounts of her driving the victims' cars. The break in the case came when authorities tracked down Tria Moore and convinced her to cooperate. In a series of recorded phone calls, Moore persuaded Wuornos to confess. Eileen's love for Tria, perhaps the only person she trusted, ultimately became her undoing. In January 1991, Aileen Wuornos was arrested at a biker bar in Volusia County. During questioning, she initially denied any involvement in the murders but eventually confessed, claiming self-defense in each case. However, her accounts were inconsistent, and her erratic behavior during the investigation only deepened the public's fascination with her. The trial of Aileen Wuornos was nothing short of a media circus. Prosecutors described her as a cold-blooded predator who lured men to their deaths, while the defense painted a picture of a woman driven to desperation by years of abuse and trauma. One key piece of evidence was Richard Mallory's criminal history. He had previously served time for sexual assault. This revelation added a layer of complexity to Wuornos' claims of self-defense. But it wasn't enough to sway the jury. In 1992, Aileen Wuornos was convicted of 6 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. Over the next decade, she remained in the public eye, granting interviews where she alternated between expressing remorse and lashing out at those she believed had wronged her. In one infamous interview, she declared, "I am a serial killer. I'd kill again." Her mental state deteriorated while on death row. Aileen's erratic behavior, coupled with her claims of being manipulated by the legal system, led some to question whether she was fit for execution. But in October 2002, after refusing further appeals, Aileen Wuornos was executed by lethal injection. Her final words were haunting. "I'll be back, like Independence Day, with Jesus." The story of Aileen Wuornos forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the intersection of trauma, poverty, and violence. Was she a cold-blooded killer or a broken woman pushed to the brink? Perhaps she was both, a complex figure whose life and crimes continue to captivate and disturb us. From the gritty highways of Florida to the cobblestone streets of Correggio, Italy, we now turn to a case as bizarre as it is horrifying. Leonarda Cianciulli didn't just kill her victims, she turned them into soap. But before we delve into this chilling tale, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. In the sleepy town of Correggio, nestled in the Italian countryside, Leonarda Cianciulli was known as a friendly neighbor, a skilled fortune teller, and a doting mother. But beneath the surface of her seemingly ordinary life lay a tale of superstition, desperation, and horrific crimes that would shock the world. Born in 1894, Leonarda's early life was fraught with hardship. She claimed her mother had cursed her before her birth, dooming her to a life of misery. This belief in curses and omens became a driving force in her life, shaping her decisions and ultimately leading to her gruesome acts. Leonarda married a man her parents disapproved of, further convincing her that she was cursed. Her fears seemed validated as she endured multiple miscarriages and the deaths of several of her children. Of her 17 pregnancies, only 4 children survived. Obsessed with protecting her remaining son, Giuseppe, Leonarda sought guidance from a fortune teller who predicted that she would lose all her children unless she made an extraordinary sacrifice. In 1939, with World War II looming and Giuseppe preparing to enlist in the Italian army, Leonarda became consumed by the idea that only human sacrifice could save him. Her first victim was Faustina Setti, a lonely woman seeking a husband. Leonarda lured Faustina to her home under the guise of helping her find a match. She gave her wine laced with poison and then struck her with an axe. Leonarda dismembered the body, boiling the remains in a large pot. The fat was skimmed off and turned into soap, which she gave to her neighbors. Even more horrifying, she used the victim's blood to make tea cakes, which she served to visitors. Leonarda meticulously planned each murder. Before luring her victims, she had them write letters to their families explaining their plans to leave town for a better life. These letters were sent after their deaths, ensuring no suspicion would fall on her immediately. Her second victim, Francesca Soavi, met a similar fate. Francesca, a school teacher seeking work, trusted Leonarda to help her find a job. Instead, she was poisoned, dismembered, and boiled. Leonarda used her remains in the same gruesome rituals, believing her sacrifices were strengthening her protective charm for Giuseppe. Virginia Cacioppo, a former opera singer, was her third and final victim. Virginia believed Leonarda could connect her with a wealthy patron who would revive her career. On September 30th, 1940, Leonarda carried out her plan. Virginia's murder, however, raised suspicions due to her prominence in society and her family's determination to find her. Leonarda's downfall began when Virginia's sister reported her missing and told the police about the last person to see her alive. Authorities searched Leonarda's home and discovered grisly evidence, including blood-stained pots and journals documenting her crimes in chilling detail. Her confession was both shocking and nonchalant, as she described the process of turning her victims into soap and tea cakes with disturbing pride. The trial of Leonarda Cianciulli became a national spectacle in Italy. The courtroom was packed with spectators eager to hear the gruesome details. Leonarda defended her actions as necessary to protect her son, showing no remorse for the lives she had taken. At one point, she reportedly said, "I gave the soap to my neighbors because it was my duty as a good neighbor. The tea cakes were part of my hospitality. I have done nothing wrong in my eyes. It was all to protect my son." Her lack of remorse and the precision with which she described the murders left the public and authorities horrified. Leonarda was convicted of multiple murders and sentenced to 30 years in prison and 3 years in a criminal asylum. During her time in prison, she wrote a memoir titled An Embittered Soul's Confessions, where she described her crimes in graphic detail, further solidifying her infamy. She died of cerebral apoplexy in 1970 while still in custody. Leonarda Cianciulli's case remains one of the most grotesque in history, a chilling testament to the lengths one person can go to in the name of superstition and maternal devotion. Her story reminds us that sometimes the most horrifying monsters are those who believe they are acting out of love. As we close tonight's journey into the minds of these notorious women, one thing becomes clear. Evil doesn't always come cloaked in darkness. Sometimes it wears the face of a grandmother, a friend, or even a loving mother. These stories are a haunting reminder of the horrors that hide in plain sight. If tonight's chilling tales captured your imagination, be sure to like this video, subscribe for more unsettling stories, and share your thoughts below. Which case left you the most intrigued and why? Let us know. We love hearing your insights. And don't forget, there's always another story waiting in the shadows. Until next time, this is Haunt, Fear, Horror, stories we dare not tell. Stay vigilant and stay curious.